They could have sent an SMS message to every American within 12 minutes. That's the level of capacity we're talking about here.
I mean, in a way, these almost sound kind of primitive. I mean, it's really just like brute forcing its way into your phone.
Why would you go out of your way to find crime if your job is to increase the revenues of that network? That's the problem. That's the conflict of interest.
Let me read you the last text I got. So this one's from about an hour ago, and it says, "Great opportunity up ahead. A stock is about to go up 60%. Would you like a trading signal?" No, thank you. Here's another one that I got earlier. "Hi, Jennifer. What's the news?" That's it. That's all it says. I get these all the time. You probably do too. Maybe they even call you Jennifer. And it seems no matter what I do, these things keep coming in. So scams themselves aren't new, but technology is definitely adding to it.
What's changed is that now people are using computers to do the communications, to create the communications, where previously they would have literally had to press buttons on a phone. It opens up the floodgates in terms of the volume of messages that you can create and the number of people that you can hurt around the world.
Eric Prieskorn has been in the telecommunications business for a long time. He's worked at T-Mobile, at Sky, at WorldCom, and that's just some of the places. In 2006, he founded a site called CommsRisk, and he left the corporate world. CommsRisk reports on the telecom industry and specifically the crimes that are associated with it, including the influx of scam texts. He says that scams via text have risen over the last decade as technology has made them easier to send en masse.
And then you had the pandemic, and criminals couldn't commit some of the crimes they'd previously committed before, so that became an accelerant for those changes.
If it feels like you're getting more scam texts these days, it's not just your imagination. According to Consumer Reports, scam texts have increased by 50% in the last year alone, and they're not just increasing in number, they're getting a lot more convincing.
The sophistication, though, of now the criminal patterns we're seeing is a lot more elaborate than they were in the past. This is a very rapid evolution we're seeing now, where we've gone from machines that make very, very simple, repetitive scam communications, bang, 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 knocking them out like that, to now far more subtle patterns that may not be so easy to identify.
Talking to Eric was an opportunity to get into the world of text scams, how they're being sent, who's behind them, and if there's anything you can do to stop them. Just as a short answer to that last one, yes, we probably could stop scam texts, but it's a lot more complicated than it sounds.
Sometimes our views on the triviality of scam and organized crime, oh, you got an annoying message, oh, I got a phone call, I didn't like the phone call. We're not seeing the bigger picture of how this is having an impact on people's lives that's become almost unimaginable.
This is Kill Switch. I'm Dexter Thomas. When I say scam text, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. These are things like fake recruiter messages, fake delivery messages, wrong number texts. Some of these are obviously scams because they come from weird email addresses or use weird characters in place of letters. These are all workarounds that scammers have found to bypass some of the security measures that telephone companies have put in place. But some of the newer methods that scammers are using are getting harder and harder to detect by the telephone networks and by us. One that's getting really popular around the world is called a SIM box.
Think of them as phones, but with 100 SIM cards or 200 SIM cards in them. So instead of a phone making one call or sending out one message at a time, it can do 200 things at once.
There's nothing nefarious about the basic technology behind these SIM boxes. I mean, think of a phone with a dual SIM feature. If you're in the middle of nowhere and the first phone network dies, you can just switch over to the other network. If you have two SIM cards, one from your primary network and one for your backup network, it's really easy to do. So just imagine that with, say, dozens of SIM cards or hundreds, and now you have the basic idea for a SIM box. Technically still legal, but now it's mostly useful for fraud. From here, it's pretty simple. You combine multiple SIM boxes to make what people call a SIM farm, and that can send out millions of messages per minute.
In New York, 300 of these things were found by the US Secret Service recently.
This was back in September, and we still don't know a whole lot about this operation. What we do know is what the Secret Service has told us, and they reported that they uncovered a massive SIM box operation in New York. 300 SIM boxes containing a total of 100,000 SIM cards spread across multiple abandoned apartment buildings within a 35-mile radius.
They could have sent an SMS message to every American within 12 minutes. That's the level of capacity we're talking about here.
That's not to say that they did that. We actually don't know what these scammers were doing. We only know about them at all because they were caught. One of the agents on the investigation said that this operation could have, quote, disabled cell phone towers and essentially shut down the cell phone network in New York City. So it goes beyond just sending some annoying texts. And again, the Secret Service isn't really telling us what these scammers were doing, but if we look at some other cases, we might find some hints.
In Latvia, 1,200 of these things were found, and it's almost certainly the case that what happened in New York was the same as what happened in Latvia. What were they used for? Distributing child pornography, extortion. But one of the big things that they were being used for was to receive one SMS message. Why would you want to receive one SMS message? Well, if you're setting up a WhatsApp account, well, it gets tied to a phone number. So if you're creating a lot of spam, scam accounts on WhatsApp, you need somebody to provide the phone numbers to create the accounts. They're using the SIM maybe only once, then throwing it away because they have the phone number. The WhatsApp account gets validated because it received the one-time password by SMS to create the account. And then it doesn't matter if even the telco blocked that SIM card because the WhatsApp account exists. So you can create hundreds of thousands of online accounts. And in Latvia, they estimated that 49 million online accounts had been created by that particular criminal outfit.
Eric points out that scam messages are coming to us in all different ways, not just through SMS messages, but through WhatsApp, through Signal, and all kinds of different messaging apps. Telecom companies can try to detect suspicious activity and block certain numbers, but scammers are usually a step ahead, and their latest technique bypasses the telephone companies completely. It's called an SMS blaster.
That's a device that essentially does the same thing that the radio antenna on a mobile phone network does when you connect your mobile phone to the network. The difference is it's not a legitimate part of the network. So that's why they're called sometimes fake base stations, false base stations, rogue base stations. When you're normally walking around a city, walking around a town or driving around, you're going to be transferred from one base station to another base station on your same provider's network, whichever is the strongest signal. These rogue base stations will have the strongest signal for people in their specific location. They're now connected to this base station. Well, it's like being connected to a network, except of course now the base station is a rogue one. It can fire lots of messages at you. And that's typically how they're used.
These SMS blasters can connect to your phone without you noticing, and once it's connected, it can send you messages. And because it's directly connected to you, the telecom company has no ability to block it. An SMS blaster can also spoof the sender ID to look like, say for example, a legitimate text from your bank. So what's to stop an SMS blaster from just spamming everyone in the country? Well, they don't have very good range, but that doesn't really matter because they're portable.
Just the other day, somebody had been using one of these SMS blasters on the London Underground, the capital's subway system, to fire out lots and lots as they're standing on the platform or travelling through the trains through the underground. In Auckland, for example, there was a student. He was paid $400 a day to drive around one of these devices, sending scam SMS messages to whoever was in range. And then the point of the message is it includes a hyperlink that points towards a phishing website that impersonates something that looks like a legitimate business or a government function.
The technology behind SMS blasters, again, was not developed specifically for scamming. It's just been co-opted by the scammers. It's actually similar to the technology behind what's known as stingrays. You might have heard about stingrays recently. Those are the devices that police sometimes use to capture data from people at protests. But instead of taking data off your phone for surveillance, the SMS blasters push data on your phone in the form of very convincing scam texts.
We're not talking about a completely new separate technology that was only created for criminals. We're talking about radio technology for communications networks, and it's just being adapted, slightly tweaked for a different kind of users.
I mean, in a way, these almost sound kind of primitive. I mean, it's really just like brute forcing its way into your phones, but you got to drive up pretty close. What is it? The range of these things is like a couple of miles or something like that?
It varies. Some of them are less. So you could have a handheld device that has only a few hundred yards. The advantage of that, of course, much more discreet, much easier to carry around. There's been cases where people have carried them around in backpacks through shopping malls, for example. Or you might have a larger device with a larger range, then heavier, so you have to put it in the back of a car or somewhere like that. In one case in Bangkok, there was said to be a particularly powerful device that had a range of 3 kilometers and was able to send something in the order of 100,000 SMS messages per hour. But that's not necessarily a good thing in terms of being a criminal, because you don't want to be caught. And that's why I would argue the London Underground example I talked about, that's like almost the perfect example, because it's about how many people you have passing by. You don't necessarily need to have a huge range.
So that's some background on how you're getting these texts. It's kind of wild to think that when you get one of these, it could just be some random person with a backpack across the street. So who are these people and what do they actually want? That's where it starts to get heavy. I want to walk through a sample scam text, and if you could tell me what's going on here, what are they trying to do? So I'm just going to read you one here. Hi, I'm Caroline from the We Work Remotely Human Resources team. We recently saw your excellent background and would like to introduce you to a remote, high-paying job opportunity. Work is so easy, you can do it from home. You'll work about 60 minutes a day and we'll provide you with free training. Daily pay ranges from $300 to $700. If you're interested, please contact us via WhatsApp or Telegram. What's the end game here?
There's a couple of things going on there. Always bear in mind that criminals are just looking for potential victims. Some people are more suggestible. Some people are more open to suggestion. And so just the very fact that you respond means that you now are a better target for all sorts of scams. Okay? So there doesn't have to necessarily be a linear relationship between the content of the message and the scam. But in that case, the linear scam would typically be they've got you on the hook. They're going to convince you that you're going to make a lot of money down the line, and maybe you have to pay a fee in order to have your application processed or something like that. So they're going to hook you in for spending some money in order to then get the money that's going to be promised to you later on. And maybe if you pay once, then they're going to make you pay a second time, because once you paid once, you really don't want to have that money wasted by not paying a second fee. So then you can see how a more susceptible person gets dragged along until eventually they realize they've got to stop. So that would be a very typical way in which that scam would evolve.
It's interesting because these scam texts are so diverse, because another one that I think a lot of people seen is just a completely random text out of the blue saying, howdy, what's going on? Or, hey, Jennifer, how are you? And then I'm not Jennifer. I might write back and say, this isn't Jennifer, wrong number.
We tend to call them now in the industry the hi dad, the hey mom scam, because it's quite often a term like that. So it seems like it's somebody familiar. You associate it in your mind with somebody that you know, and that's the start of the process. But again, it's the same sequence there where they're just looking to see who's going to reply. They just want to get you into a conversation. And then maybe you do reply back and you go, I'm not your mom. I'm a man. And they go, well, I'm very sorry. I have the wrong number. But you see, the point is you've already replied back. You've already engaged with them on some level. And so can they turn the conversation around to selling cryptocurrency or something like that? It's all about that initial engagement. It's also about trying to get you off maybe the channel of communication that was used in the beginning, which could be an SMS message, towards something encrypted. Because if it's encrypted, it's much harder for any technology to be used to monitor this behavior, to intervene, to protect you. So that's another thing that they're looking to do too, is just to try and get you somewhere else. So some scams are very simple. They stop very quickly and the goal is very clear very early on. Some it's a long game. They just want to hook you in, and they will take you as far as they possibly can. They're running a lot of scams, these organized criminals. They'll just find the one that will be the one that you are most susceptible to.
So who exactly are these criminals with the time and patience to play out a long game of this scale? The world behind this is a lot bigger than whoever sent you that annoying text.
When we talk about some of the cyber crimes that go on in the world today, there's this pattern where we talk about kids, maybe teenagers, maybe early 20s. They're learning from each other on Discord. They're going to certain forums and they're sharing information. They're sharing advice on how to commit crime. And that's definitely a way in which crime gets propagated and repeated. But to some extent, those people are amateurs. Not everybody's an amateur. So what I think you're seeing is a degree to which the professionals are teaching each other how to commit crime, and also they're franchising crime. So they may provide a criminal service, and the point of the criminal service is that somebody else will come along and use the service to commit a more specific crime on top of it. And that then has a multiplier effect. Not every criminal needs to understand how a phone network works. It's capitalism, but in the criminal world. Why try to do everything yourself when you can get very, very good at a layer of crime and then sell your services to somebody at a different layer?
This is when you know crime is getting sophisticated, when people specialize in one area to reduce their liability. So that text about a great crypto deal or even the random "Hi Jennifer" text likely has a lot of people working on different layers behind it. And it gets pretty dark pretty quick.
In Myanmar, in Cambodia, and in Laos, which are the three countries that have taken a lot of the scam compounds that used to be based in China and have become the new homes for scam compounds, it's estimated that there's about 100,000 people working in scam compounds. And there's a lot of tragic stories about people being murdered, tortured, hijacked. It's effectively modern day slavery. We're talking about huge numbers of people being persuaded to move to a foreign country to work in these ones with offers of jobs, well-paid jobs, well-paid IT job. Some people move just because they know they're going to work for a criminal enterprise and they don't care. Other people hijacked. I mean, there was a terrible case that I was reading the other day. 19-year-old Chinese boy was sold into slavery by a 17-year-old Chinese girl. You know, she had befriended him. She had become his girlfriend. She had told him that she had family running businesses in Myanmar. They flew to Thailand. They traveled overland to the border. And when they arrived at the border, there's a bunch of goons to grab a hold of him. She went and had a 10-day holiday in Thailand, and she had pocketed her, I think it was something in the order of $15,000 she'd got paid for selling him to slavery.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And to be fair to the Chinese government, who are alive to this problem, they are now prosecuting her. You know, she returned to China, and they're going to do something about it. But that poor boy was working 16, 20-hour shifts in a scam compound in Myanmar for 4 months until his friends and family were able to pull together a ransom of $45,000 to get him out. In the meantime, the poor lad was beaten because he's not meeting his targets. That poor lad has lost some of his hearing as a result of the beating. And that's not even by far the worst case that I could recount to you. I mean, there are some absolutely appalling stories. The only good thing you can say about AI is that if AI gets so good that you don't need to make a human being a slave to do it anymore, at least we won't have the problem with the human trafficking. In a way, I look forward to that, because the level of human misery that's occurring in some places it's quite upsetting. It's quite upsetting when you read the stories.
A lot of the scam texts that you get about stocks or selling crypto or job recruiting or the random "Hi mom, oops, wrong number," those kind of texts, the ones that are after the long game, these likely originate from these scam compounds. This kind of scam has exploded since 2020. Why? Well, there's a pretty simple theory behind it. Chinese organized criminals had built casinos that were sitting empty during the pandemic, and they needed something to do with the empty buildings. So they converted them into scam compounds. So if you engage with one of those scam texts, there's a good chance that the person you'll end up talking to is in one of those buildings, being watched by guards in case they try to escape.
I'm the criminal. I want to hook you into talking to somebody who's going to appear like a beautiful woman. I'm going to talking to somebody who's going to try and sell you cryptocurrency. So what do? I send you a message and then, oh, whoops, it was the wrong number. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to message you. That message was an automated message. The follow-up message was an automated message. They're sat in the scam compound waiting to see if you're the kind of person who's going to respond, who's going to get into a conversation. And that's why they employ all these people in these scam compounds, just to have conversations with people, weeding through the population to find who are the ones who can be exploited, who will be open to this idea, that idea. Maybe your weakness is a pretty girl. You don't know that you're messaging some guy from Manila, but you're going to be seeing a picture of a beautiful woman. They'll have a beautiful woman in the compound who will be brought out to do the live video conversation when it's needed. The rest of the time, they're just working you.
This is the background of all this stuff. On the receiving end, we just see an annoying text, but the operation behind each message can be massive. There's the technology on the ground, and then there's the buildings full of forced laborers. This hurts a lot of people, but it continues because it's a viable business. How many people have to actually answer and get hooked into this thing for it to make money for you?
It will depend on the scam. If I'm running a scam compound and I have somebody who's my prisoner who has to sit at like a screen and then cheat you over the course of 6 months, well, I'm going to need a much bigger amount of money from you to make it worthwhile to do it. Okay. So it does vary a lot depending upon the scam. But what I would say is all the evidence shows that these scams are so incredibly lucrative, whether at the low end or at the high end. This thing is just ramping up and up and up. They're just taking the accumulated profits that they're generating from crime, reinvesting it in more crime, and the things that we're doing to chip away at it, we're not keeping pace. We're falling further and further behind. So their margins, their profits are getting higher and higher and higher. And we are not at all sophisticated at doing anything about tackling them.
When it comes to stopping scam texts, the advice you usually hear is learning how to spot them. Watch out for misspellings or weird formatting in the text. Don't click links if you don't know the sender. Maybe don't reply. We also hear that certain demographics are more vulnerable and that we need to teach them to be more savvy. But all of this is kind of missing the bigger picture.
It's been argued that older people are more vulnerable to scams. But then there's also some conflicting data that says actually young people spend a lot more time on the phone. They're a lot more casual, shall we say, about what they do. They think of themselves as savvy, so they fall for scams. And I think really what we should be learning from the criminals is however much you train people, however much you educate people to be scam aware, to improve their awareness, to be less likely to fall for it, those criminals, they're gaining a lot of data about what works in terms of mental tricks, psychological ploys, manipulations. They're masters of it, and they have an enormous amount of data about what actually works in practice. So they're always getting better and better and better. I'm not a psychologist, but from what I understand about the topic, suggestibility is not well correlated to intelligence. And that's what the criminals are looking for. Are you suggestible in some ways? Can they plant an idea that you will act upon? Can they hook you with something that tempts you or motivates you in a certain way? And they're looking for your weakness. And different people will have different weaknesses.
I mean, I think this is the really difficult thing here is because I think there are probably some people who started listening to this who are thinking, this is going to be great. Dexter got an expert here who's going to give me the top 3 tips for not falling victim to a scam. And it doesn't sound like you want to give that to me.
I mean, look, I could do that. And I could say things like, don't let your phone get downgraded to a 2G network because that's typical for the format for SMS blasters. And I could say, look for spelling errors in the message. And, if there's a hyperlink, if it's a link that's been shortened, be suspicious or stuff like that. If someone makes a call, don't receive the call back to your bank rather than yeah, that's all good stuff. That's all common sense stuff. I'm not going to argue that you shouldn't do that, but it's not enough. It's never going to be enough. The rate of acceleration in criminal sophistication to try to solve the problem like that is fundamentally the wrong method.
So there is one small thing that you may be able to do. If you have an Android phone, assuming it's relatively recent, you can block those SMS blasters from even being able to connect to your phone at all. It's pretty simple. You just disable 2G. There's a switch in your settings to do it. I put a link in the show notes to a guide that walks you through it, and trust me, it's very simple. It takes like 30 seconds. For iPhones, unfortunately, you're kind of stuck. You can't turn off 2G unless you use lockdown mode, which would also limit other functions on your phone that you probably want to keep on. Other than that, again, base rule, if you get a text with a link in it, don't click it. Even if it looks legit, even if it's a text from your bank or your doctor, call them and confirm that it is actually from them. I know it's annoying, but it's better safe than sorry. But again, all these things, even the features that let you report scams, that's treating the symptom. If we really want to stop these scams, the solution probably isn't in your phone settings. It's in the phone companies.
The correct method is for the businesses to look at who they do business with. Who's buying the SIM cards? Who's making the bulk communications? These criminals had 100,000 SIM cards in New York. Now, that's a lot of SIM cards. A phone network should be saying, where have all our SIM cards gone? What are all these strange customers on our network? Why are they not behaving like a normal person? Let me give you an example about normal and abnormal behavior that a network should pick up on. When you carry your phone around, when you go around, you move. You move from place to place. Well, a SIM box doesn't move when it's in a New York apartment. It's sat there not moving at all. That should be a red flashing warning. Like, why have I got such a peculiar customer? Why have I got so many peculiar customers all in the same place, never moving? Perhaps they only make outbound communication. That would be weird because a normal person sends and receives. There should be lots of flashing warning lights going off in those telcos.
This really reminds me also of the conversation about detecting AI, right? Which is to say, there was a point at which you could give people tips and you'd tell them, hey, look for too many fingers on one hand. And I remember, and I was saying this back here on the same show back then, you were fooling yourself if you think that you were going to be able to use those same tricks 6 months from now. And sure enough, you look at AI generated pictures, AI generated videos, the hands look perfect. The idea that we can just educate the public and that will solve everything. It sounds like bringing a knife to a nuke fight, pardon the American violent imagery here, but it just seems like it's not functional.
So true. So true. I mean, for myself, personal experience, a few months ago, I received my first ever spam call from an AI. And I think I'm a pretty savvy guy about, this kind of stuff. And I listened to the spam AI talk to me, and I had to ask the question, are you an AI? Because it was not obvious. Now, thankfully, that particular spam AI did honestly answer the question. Yes, I am an artificial intelligence because it had been programmed that way. But I had to think about it. I had to ask the question. But what really upset me about that interaction was I continued my conversation with the AI, not trying to buy the thing it wanted to sell me, but actually trying to investigate, learn what was happening. It claimed it received my phone number from one of the world's biggest telecoms industry associations. A conference that I had attended shortly beforehand where I have to hand over my phone number in order to register and participate. What does that say about our attitude towards data? That call was illegal. It was illegal because my number is on the list in the UK that's essentially you're not allowed to call me for marketing purposes. And yet one of the world's biggest telecoms associations has handed over that data to another company, doesn't bother to check the laws, just made the spam call because they're going to make some money from me today. And that's where the rotten heart of it lies. In the end, The problem with trying to solve this is that a phone company makes money for carrying calls, for transmitting messages, for doing the communications. They don't make money for blocking things. If all those calls got blocked, if all those messages got blocked, if all those bad actors were taken out the ecosystem, revenues would go down. Why would you go out of your way to find crime if your job is to increase the amount of traffic on your network, if your job is to increase the revenues of that network?
Mm.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the conflict of interest. That's the fundamental issue here. They may not be actively choosing to enable crime, but they're also not got any reason to work harder to prevent crime. There's a lot of money being made off the back of scams. Ultimately, the result is corrosive for society. You don't trust the call coming into your phone. You don't trust the messages. I don't answer phone calls anymore. I use other modes of communication now. And that's sad that when somebody maybe really does want to speak to me on the phone, that I'm rejecting them. But it's also bad for society. The phone network was a beautiful thing. It was a thing where you could pick up a phone and with 99, I'm not making this up, 99.999% probability, you could dial a number to anywhere in the world and it would connect. And now people don't want to pick up the phone at the other end. What does that say about how we've gone backwards in terms of how we communicate with each other?
I mean, you're not wrong. I'm thinking of actually, there's a text thread that I got added to that I just assumed was spam. And people are making plans for having dinner here in LA. And I'm thinking, man, they're getting sophisticated. Come to find out, these were actually people. A friend had added me into a group. I just wasn't familiar with everybody. After the event, they sent pictures in the thread. It looked like a good time. I didn't respond once because I thought it was a scam. Now I got like 10 people I got to apologize to because they think I'm ignoring them. Because I'm scared to answer texts because I assumed it was scam. You're right. It's actually breaking down society.
And here's the thing, right? It's about what we considered normal. There was a time, your phone, you could trust that people are basically only people you know, people who want to communicate you. Someone with a genuine reason to call you would call you. And that was your attitude towards your phone. What's your attitude towards email? It's not the same, is it? Your email is full. No. You got a junk folder. There's lots of crap in your junk folder. Maybe sometimes a good message gets into your junk folder. Maybe you send a message and you're annoyed it didn't get through to someone else because it ended up in their junk folder. We are transferring from a scenario where essentially your phone, voice communications, message communications, you generally would trust them, to the scenario like email. It's going to be like that in future. And yeah, we're going to use technology and yeah, we're going to weed it out and we're going to get rid of some of the bad stuff. But is that the level that we now want to be communicating at? That level of trust and confidence? Yeah. That's a step back. And that's sadly the way we're going about solving the problem, because a lot of it is that we're trying to solve the problem in the way that the problem was solved for email. Email is email. It's not something where I am in an emergency and I want to speak to you, I'd send you an email. When I'm in an emergency and I want to speak to you, I want to call you. So to start turning that kind of communication into the level of email, we're losing something in society. That makes me sad. It makes me sad.
You know, a little after we recorded this conversation, a friend of mine sent me a song that I had not heard in a long time. It's this really simple and beautiful song by this guy named Lavi Sifri, and apparently it's been going viral recently. I can't play it here, you know, copyright, all that sort of thing, but I can read you part of the lyrics. It's strange how a phone call can change your day and take you away from the feeling of being alone. Bless the telephone. And that's the name of the song, Bless the Telephone, which is something I think you could still say sincerely in 1971 when it was recorded. And then I think to 20 years later, to 1991, when Tribe Called Quest put out a song called Sky Pager, which is seriously just a song about how cool it is to have a device that lets people contact you when you're outside. At some point, the ability to contact someone instantly was this futuristic or even magical thing. I'm not that young, but I guess I'm not old enough to really remember that time period, because by the time I was really using my own phone and especially using email, it was already something that we saw as potentially suspicious. And now, forget about it. When's the last time you heard someone say that they even like their phone? Anyway, we'll leave the links to those songs in the show notes if you want to check that out.
Fine.
Thank you for checking out another episode of the video version of the Kill Switch podcast. And yes, this is a podcast, which means you can find it wherever you listen to your podcasts. The audio version has a whole different mix by Kyle, so if you prefer to get this in audio, you can find the link to that in the description.